Right, hello everybody and welcome. I hope you can all hear me. Is there any problems at the back there? Everyone can hear okay? Okay, first of all, thank you for attending today and your patience while we get going. And I welcome you to this meeting of the West of England Combined Authority Committee. I'm Dan Norris, the committee chair and from the Combined Authority, of course. And we also have here today the three leaders of the unitary authorities, Kevin Guy from Bath and North East Somerset Council, Marvin Rees from Bristol City Council, and Toby Savage from South Gloucestershire Council. We also have here Richard Bonner to my right. Richard's just put his hand up, chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership, who is a non-voting member of the committee. Before we move on to the main agenda items, I would like to mention that some members of the public are joining our meeting to present their statements. Please note that all the statements received have been circulated and read by committee members and are available to view on the Combined Authorities website. Okay, the next item is item 2, apologies for absence. None have been received for today's meeting. And indeed, you can see who is here. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations to declare, please? Okay. Now, I have an interest to declare in relation to recommendation 1 of the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel, agenda item 20, which makes a recommendation on the allowances to be paid to the Metro Mayor, and I will not vote on that recommendation. The next item is the minutes of the previous meetings. The minutes of the previous meeting held on the 3rd of December have been circulated with the meeting papers. Are members happy, please, for these minutes to be confirmed as a correct record of the meeting? Okay. Yes, Marvin? Yep. Okay, thank you. The exempt minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of December have been circulated to committee members. Just to note that the meeting was held in confidential session. A public summary of the proceedings is included with the agenda papers. Are members again happy for the exempt minutes to be confirmed as a correct record of the meeting, please? Thank you, Toby. Okay. Thank you. The next item is item 5, which is Chair's announcements. And I just want to advise, please, that there will be an urgent item of business regarding the appointment of an interim monitoring officer and an interim Section 73 financial officer. The Scrutiny Chair, Winston Duguid, to my right, has been consulted and is in agreement that this item should be considered today. And could you confirm that, Winston, please, so we all know?
Yes, I confirm.
I
confirm that.
Thank you very much indeed, Winston. Item 6, items from the public. Now, we have up to half an hour for this. The first part of this is questions. We have 10 questions that were submitted for this meeting. And as usual, details have been circulated and written answers have been sent to the questioners. And these are published on the Combined Authority website along with the agenda papers. Statements is the next part I need to address. We have received 12 statements. And as I mentioned earlier, we've made arrangements for some members of the public to join this meeting to present their statements where they've requested to do this. Up to 3 minutes per statement will be permitted today. And I'd be really grateful, please, if individuals could summarize the points they wish to make as we've read all the statements, which are also published on the Combined Authority website. So I'm now going to call speakers in turn. People have indicated that they're intending to be here today, so I will call them. But there are some people who have sort of put forward but said they're not going to actually speak. But I will check to make sure that anyone's decided to change their mind and turn up, they can also speak. Okay, can we start, please, with David Redgewell on budget and transport issues, please, David. And David, you have 3 minutes, please.
And that's the really situation for me. Adaptation was to like to the original body and by the project the next day, any kind make sure the economy relevant and make it start really 6% of the figures there's there financial difficulties there in the bottom budget distribution. There's a not healthy situation. We've got to have a brand everything up to get that money and then go to it's very hard
Just another 30 seconds, please, David.
We need to really trust. That's what the program is grateful for. Your and now
Thank you ever so much, David. Thank you very much indeed for that. And you're absolutely right. Of course, the government needs to stop slashing funding in order for us to provide the services that people want and need. Not least because we've got a very serious and testing net zero target of 2030, and clearly public transport is a huge part of us achieving that. Okay, the next person to speak, please, is Peter Travis. Is Peter here? Peter? No. Hold up your hand if you're here. Peter? No. Okay, move on. Councillor Duncan Hounsell, please.
The strategic metro envisages harmonised services crisscrossing the risk-of sub-region. Consultation has been included in the new station package as part of Metro West 2011 and featured in the joint transport plan. The station itself is supported by nearby University, which would use Salford as its local station. It's supported by Salford Parish Council and the residents. James Morgan is given a Salford station support the outset WECA's recent bid for £50,000 from the Department of Transport restoring the railway fund to provide funding to further examine the business feasibility of the Salford station was unsuccessful. The feedback was frustrating and the bid was halted for lack of the information that was able to find out. An up-to-date study was built on the higher level commissioned by Appendix Council, carried out by the Hill. That study stated that a reopening station on the existing site would have a benefit cost ratio of 2 to 1. Patronage was estimated some 200,000 users per annum. These figures are likely to be higher than which would make a local shift from road to rail. The station goal was to contribute to the local economy and help to address road congestion in the Bristol Bath corridor and contribute to carbon reduction and sustainable transport. Reopening the rail stations bus plus, and the plan dedicated bus priorities on the A4. Taking traffic away from the A4 is intentional. It's extremely congested to be avoided in the years needed to shift commuter traffic onto public transport. A Salter station will not under pressure. The Salter station only has passive provision for network rail. Its footprint is bigger even than the Junction station.
Just another 30 seconds, please.
Whether it was already willing to pay 27 hoping that the remaining 50 tax would come from the DOT. I asked whether the entire 70,000 go ahead as possible. This is all about the concept of major transport schemes. Let's do this. Let's engage practically with GWO as well. The concept of Treasury as a network of commuter stations. It would be crazy for commuter services to pass the Salter station side without stopping. Salter station, bring it back.
Thank you very much, Duncan. Indeed, really appreciate the points you've made. And of course, this has been an issue that you've been talking about for a long time. And I understand your frustration. I'm very keen to open as many local stations as we possibly can where they can make a difference to all the things that we care about. And we will continue working closely on that. If we can do it, we'll do it. Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'm just going to check. I don't think the following people are here. Is Maddie Longhurst here? Petronella Tyson? Kim Hicks? Ian Pond? Jimmy Thompson? Okay. In that case, is Councillor Joanna Wright here, please?
Hello. The City Regional Transport is set to deliver investment in local transport networks and is set to fund bus service improvement plans, high-quality cycle infrastructure, and improved journeys made by walking. This committee needs to agree to a shared vision for transport. This means agreement on our key transport network and a credible plan to tackle congestion and parking. Plans must be put in place and agreed at a regional and a local level to deliver effective strategic bus and cycle routes. If local authorities are unable to deliver this vision, WECA should seek to take that responsibility. Government is awarding the CRSTS as it recognises that systemic change requires visionary political leadership. Local councils have for years failed at having a transformational vision and delivering it. A shared vision with effective leadership minimises the possible local opposition that often prevents the development of the right transport routes and infrastructure. I am calling on you, Mayor Norris, to create a cycling, walking and wheeling commissioner as a way to create visionary leadership. The Cycling, Walking and Infrastructure Plan, the LCWIP, must add the agreed strategic regional map. And this useful document was only signed off on condition that that map was agreed. Our roads need to be safe for everyone. Public highways have been designed solely around moving cars, and little thought has ever gone into developing the public highways for those walking and cycling. When politicians announce major funding initiatives, it is for big schemes, failing to notice that individuals make small journeys more often. A timeline needs to be put in place, delivering infrastructure which focuses on school streets, pedestrian and cycle crossings, cycle storage, zero tolerance for road accidents, and a speed reduction strategy. This will save lives, prevent injury, and reduce emissions. One of the major failings of the current CRSTS plan is that the East of Bath is not even mentioned or budgeted for, despite being a major contributor to the traffic problems in the WECA region. Closing one minor road in the East of Bath, an area that has one of the highest levels of air pollution in the UK, no parking right, reduced bus services, and few resident parking zones, does not tackle the transport problems.
Just another 30 seconds, please.
The Green Party believes we must share vision and deliverability for transport and for this process to support all residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for that. Appreciate that. And thank you for the discussions that we've had and I've had with your Green colleagues, because it's very helpful. These are important issues, and I do my very best to listen to them and understand them. So thank you for doing that again today. Okay, Ian Barrett, who's no stranger. Ian, I've seen Ian. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Dan. Hello, mayors. Hello, leaders.
I'm speaking as chair of the West of England Nature Partnership. I'd like to reiterate our support for the West of England Green Recovery Fund and the inclusion of £10 million ring fence to invest in our region's natural environment. I'd also like to welcome the proposed investment into the Commons Connection project, which will contribute towards the West of England Nature Recovery Network, as well as bringing nature closer to people in the region. A functioning, resilient natural environment is vital to our society, economy, and well-being, and will be crucial to mitigating the effects of climate change. But the natural environment is in a critical state, as reflected by the declared ecological emergencies. Fortunately, we know what we need to do to address the ecological emergency, protect our existing wildlife hotspots, create bigger and better habitats at scale, and manage other land sympathetic for wildlife. And to do that, we need organisations across the region to work in partnership towards an agreed vision for nature. The West of England Nature Partnership is the designated local nature partnership for the West of England and is one of the most active local nature partnerships in the country. It brings together local government, environmental charities, water companies and others to deliver a vision of a thriving and well-connected natural environment that works for wildlife and for people. The West of England Nature Partnership's Nature Recovery Prospectus brings together strategic projects that, if delivered, would make huge strides towards restoring nature in the West of England. The challenge now is to secure the funding needed to develop and deliver these projects, alongside the work needed to make the wider environment more hospitable to nature. That's why our recently published strategy sets out a renewed priority to facilitate investment in and delivery of projects that deliver the West of England Nature Recovery Network with a focus on large and impactful projects. The West of England is also at the forefront of innovative work to attract funding and investment into the natural environment, including the development of a Bristol Avon catchment market, a groundbreaking market-based mechanism for funding and delivering nature-based projects. By combining public funding, such as the Green Recovery Fund, with private investment, we'll be able to accelerate the change needed to deliver nature's recovery. Working as a partnership is already to enable us to map one of the country's first business for nature recovery network, produce an ambitious tree and woodland strategy for the region, and leverage millions of pounds of public and private investment in the natural environment. Continuing this approach will enable us to source match funding for the proposed Green Recovery Fund and help direct resources towards the areas that will provide the biggest bang for our buck, making the combined authorities investment go further in addressing the climate and ecological emergencies. We're looking forward to continuing to work closely with the four unitary authorities and the combined authority, and hope that the proposed Green Recovery Fund leads to an acceleration of efforts to restore nature across the West of England, building on the strength of our existing partnership work. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian. And I think the work of the West of England Nature Partnership is amazing. Very impressed, and thank you for speaking today. Is Councillor Ed Plowden here? Ed? Hi, Ed.
Actually, I'm making this statement on behalf of Councillor.
Oh, okay.
I'm Councillor David Wilcox.
Who are you, please?
Councillor David Wilcox.
Oh, sorry, David. Didn't hear you. Okay, thank you.
I can't hear the chair's microphone, by the way. He's very, very quiet.
Try and get it nearer.
Thank you.
Better?
This is a statement on behalf of Councillor Ed Plowden. When Metrobus was first launched, there was a clear policy approach taken that all services had to be commercially provided, and that no publicly funded support would be offered to run these services. This was justified based on the substantial public funds invested in giving priority for buses to make them more reliable and viable. Unfortunately, not all routes were commercially taken up, and in particular the route through South Bristol from Hengrove via Hartcliffe and Withywood to Long Ashton Park and Ride. This route now has a number of stranded bus stops that have never been used. As part of the supported bus services process, a number of supported and at-risk commercial routes are being tendered, with no guarantee that all of them will end up being funded. This now includes the Metrobus CPNN extension route in South Gloucestershire, meaning the original policy principle appears no longer to apply. South Bristol is a highly deprived area with well-documented severance to city centre employment opportunities due to long bus journey times. This surely must now be the time to test the market and include it as one of the services for which tenders are invited. This service specifications should already exist, as they were prepared and consulted on with the commercial operators. This statement is endorsed by Councillor Tony Dyer, Councillor Christine Townsend, Councillor Lisa Stone, Councillor Ed Plowden and Councillor Tessa Fitzjohn and myself.
Thank you. That's great. Have you got another statement to make as well, David?
Yeah, I've
Yeah, just want to be right. Sorry. So Do you want to do your own bit, as it were, instead of the bit you're doing for someone else? Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bristol Green Party and I welcome the City Region's Sustainable Transport Settlement Report and support all 6 of its recommendations. This is a game-changing amount of cash to revolutionise active travel within the combined authority area. The combined authority actually bid for 800 to 1,000 million pounds of funding and only received 540 million pounds. Can I ask what the difference was between dreams and reality? However, I have some reservations about Bristol City Council's ability to deliver its components. Currently, the council does not have a livable neighbourhood strategy. The Overview Scrutiny Management Board will be holding a work day in March or April to define that strategy, but this will still need to be adopted by the council and the administration. The council is still planning to deliver non-LTN 120 compliant schemes, such as the northern and southern sections of the number 2 bus route scheme. If these are funded, then further projects will be ignored by Active Travel England. There is confusion in the current budget on how the council will be funding its own local contribution. The Clean Air Zone is the obvious funding stream, but my questions and scrutiny of the budget have brought this into doubt. Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much, David. Well, look, I'll reply to both very briefly, both your statements, if I may. On the monies that you talked about, the 800 million figure, that is true that the government dangled that as a possibility, but then took that away from us and the other combined authorities, so it wasn't there in the end to get. But just to be absolutely clear, of what was available, we got, and we got the best settlement per head of any combined authority in England. So we did very well out of that. Obviously, we like the government to give us more money, and we're hoping that if we use that money wisely, we will be in a strong position to be successful in the future. And then in terms of Metro Bus, couldn't agree more. It makes no sense not to have buses running and working and doing the job that we intended. So I'm on that, and I'm very glad you've raised it, because it's something I feel quite strongly about. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who is due to speak that I have missed, please? Okay, thank you ever so much then to everyone who submitted a statement. All those comments have been noted, and where they relate to agenda items will be taken into account by the committee today. The next item is item 7, comments from the chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership Board. Very pleased to welcome Richard Bonner here today. Richard, would you please speak to us?
Dan, thank you. So first of all, we would like, as the LEP, to welcome the meeting today and the emphasis on supporting the region's economic recovery from COVID-19, the pandemic, and of course tackling the important issues of climate and biodiversity emergency. The papers demonstrate the scale of the activity that we're seeing across the region, and the LEP board are committed to supporting the delivery of these vital projects that will help to support our region's economic recovery. We've reflected in the papers that perhaps what doesn't come across clearly strategically is how we turn our public sector investment into entrepreneurial activity to look at how the public and private sectors can work together. And I think we would like to see how we can work and support the Mayor and the unitary authorities on bringing more of an entrepreneurial spirit to life through our investment activities. Yesterday, however, I was at the University of Bath's court meeting on behalf of the LEP, and it was a brilliant example of how the LEP funding and activity can bring public and private sectors together through the IUPS scheme, which, Toby, of course, you're familiar with in South Gloucestershire. And it was a great example of where £10 million worth of LEP funding unlocks significant private sector investment that brings economic activity and high-quality jobs to our region. Turning to the Regional Recovery and Adaptions Fund, we're very pleased to see that the fund continues to act as a lifeline for businesses and people living in the region. The LEP Business Board members are therefore in support of the additional £5 million worth of funding towards the creation of the Regional Recovery and Adaptions Fund, which we know helps businesses to tackle the ongoing impact from the pandemic and the disruption that has been caused more recently by Omicron. And indeed, at our last LEP board meeting, we discussed the impacts of the Plan B restrictions on the ongoing uncertainty. And we know that it's vital that we continue to support businesses as we come out of and start to live with the pandemic. Turning to the Green Recovery Fund, and of course we really welcome the support and the indicative allocations for the £50 million Green Recovery Fund. The scale of that ambition is, of course, to be very welcomed. I think that the LEP board would also like to see more of the detail coming forward, and of course that's talked to in the papers, but we recognise as we look around the country that it's a very competitive space, and we would like officers and the various different members to really start to draw through detailed activity plans so that we can start to make the impact that we're all aware is necessary. One thing that we feel has not been mentioned in the papers is the issue of climate change adaptation, and particularly the issues of dealing with some of the flood protection measures that are required in a number of our localities, not least of which in Bristol. And we would like to see how we can work with our partners such as the Environment Agency and other stakeholders to bring forward the funding proposals that are so necessary to unlock vital economic activity in the region. Turning to the transport papers, of course the business community supports the scale and ambition shown through the various transport initiatives, and Dan, you're quite right, we were delighted to see the scale of the CRSTS funding, and we are really pleased to start to see how that's going to make an impact in the short term. I think one investment activity that we have seen to be welcomed, which links to long-term thinking, is the next phase of funding for the mass transit activities, and we feel that these are difficult schemes to deliver in the short term but need long-term strategic thinking, and that funding's to be welcome, but we would like to see an activity plan that allows us to start to draw long-term strategic direction and funding in what's going to be a complex activity to deliver. Turning to the adult education budget, of course we welcome the further direction towards the adult education budget. It's very positive, and we see that the devolved autonomy that we have in the region is vitally important. We also recognise that some 22,800 people have been supported and have had access to skills through the various different activities, and the West of England Skills Advisory Panel, chaired by LEP board members Chris Gurry and Joanne Rumley, has brought together businesses and training providers to highlight the skills that we so vitally need. And it's very important that we continue to address those skills programs to our economic activity and recovery in things like construction, retrofit, modern methods of housing, and so on and so forth. And so the business community also supports the Combined Authorities bid to the DfE for the Wave 3 of its National Skills Bootcamp programme, which has the potential to leverage more funding into the region to support our skills agenda as we need and our priorities. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Richard. Appreciate that. Okay, the next item is item 8, comments from the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We have received written comments from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and copies have been circulated and are available on the website alongside the committee agenda papers. Can I ask now Winston, as I introduced just a moment ago, to present these comments, please? Hello, Winston.
Thank you, Metro Mayor. Since the last meeting, the transport subgroup, the skills subgroup have both met, and I observed at the LEP meeting. Very grateful for that, Richard, and very interesting meeting. We had a long meeting on Monday, 3 hours. We had both the Metro Mayor and Councillor Savage with us. We're very appreciative of that, and interesting discourse, etc. There was a lot on the papers. Perhaps next year we need to think about just how many papers we have in the January meeting and the October meeting. We need to space it out, but we are where we are. And they were a little late, but I know that's because of the volume of the papers, so it was a vicious circle. We really homed in on the budget, and I think that's what we'll do next year, because the figures do jump out on page 46, 47. They're quite stark at first reading, but if you read the background papers, and with the help of the Section 151 officer, they do create a sensible picture, and corporate and democratic core costs are just rising by 3%, and the CA support services are rising by 14%, which is a big increase, but a lot of that is ICT, and that reflects the need to maintain back office services, particularly in ICT, where the growth of development of digital tools, corporate websites, as well as data warehousing and geospatial infrastructure are needed. And generally, it's a criticism I think unitary authorities and combined authorities have had, that they haven't spent enough on ICT, perhaps as systems developed. And I know that, we didn't even mention cybersecurity. I'm aware that the chair of Scrutiny at Gloucester City Council this week has pointed out that they've had 2 incidences now in the last 10 years, and it's a real worry in terms of what effect that could have. So that doesn't look untoward to us. So in essence, in the financial year, it rises by 7% from the outturn this year to the budget for next year, and then a figure of 631 has been added in SDS to fund housing and planning staff. So we understood the numbers in discussions before the meeting, during the meeting, and then after the meeting. And to us, obviously, we'll see how the cost base pans out, because we don't quite know what is going to come on the horizon. But basically, what we were giving, we understood. I think the only other point on the budget is that we are supportive of the financial reserve policy, and Councillor Gollop in the Audit Committee has looked at this in more detail. The capital strategy, we were supportive. The investment fund programme, supportive, but some change requests. We noted this report, but asked that officers send us some further information on the latest position on the timeline for producing the spatial development strategy, and to explain the delay in taking forward the specific housing delivery programme through the North Keynsham Land Acquisition Fund. We were supportive of the Regional Recovery and Adaptations Fund. We were very supportive of the Green Recovery Fund, and frankly, very frustrated that it hasn't been ratified yet. Every day is a delay, and we can't afford any more delays on climate change and the Green Recovery Fund. And we need to wake up and smell the coffee, and all of us need to do that. Very supportive of the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement, and all the bus things, and Councillor Savage made a very good point on Monday that I think the phrase you used was strain every sinew. Yeah, good, I've got that right. I just hope it's coordinated between you, Mr. Metro Mayor, and the unitary authority leaders, the officers, and coordinating with the MPs. This is cross-party. We've got to get the buses right. David Redgewell's articulates better than anyone. It is a crisis we've got. Just at the time that we're trying to promote active travel, it's particularly unfortunate. And I think you've got to it's all about relationship management. Different parts of people in the room have got different relationships with different people. I was interested, Councillor Savage, to see that you once worked for Grant Shapps, for instance. Well, there's a hotline there that if you could reconvene that, because on a serious note, it looks to us as if the Baroness, the Secretary of State, the Treasury are obviously the key decision makers. And if you can coordinate your individual contacts and put pressure on, if it needed to be, on the MPs that you know well, we really do have to, as you said in that meeting, strain every sinew, but really coordinate the activity in lobbying government and the decision makers. You may well feel you're confident in doing that. I'd just like you to look again at that to make sure that we are totally cooperating. Okay. Just moving on, adult education budget, we had gone into a bit of detail in subcommittee. We're supportive of this report, noting the approach will be sufficiently flexible in helping to meet individual skill needs as the economy continues to move into recovery. The other good thing that Steve and his team is doing is putting together a dashboard approach, and we look forward to seeing that dashboard. It's all about not output, but outcomes. And we feel pretty confident that Steve and his team understand that and have explained it very well. Won't comment on the independent remuneration panel. I won't really comment on, we didn't give enough time in some respects to the LEP budget, and I think that's because it was fairly straightforward to read. But what I've asked Richard is if I, as a Baines councillor, can come along and meet him for, say, 45 minutes in March, with a fellow councillor from Bristol and one from South Gloucestershire, so we represent the region, just to understand a bit more from where you're coming from, the developments of, if we ever get the white paper on the LEP and what that means. And I think that would be good, just so we understand the scope of what you do. But really appreciative of that meeting. very professional. Interesting comments from Professor Rigby on culture, which are sometimes are missed out on, and the Southwest Energy as well. I mean, my perspective of the contacts and network I've got is that Scotland know what they're doing, and we're not far behind in the Southwest, the broader Southwest. I'm on several boards that go down to Truro, etc., of understanding, and we've got fantastic opportunities. And working with Western Gateway, now is the time to capitalise. My last comments are, I don't really want to add to the narrative I put about relationships between the Metro Mayor and unitary authority leaders. The obvious comment and the frustration is it's all about relationship management and membership, and we really hope that Professor West's efforts bear fruit. The stakes are frankly too high if they don't, on transport, housing, particularly climate change. This isn't a rehearsal. It's really quite stark. We've set ourselves a very bold ambition of net zero by 2030, 20 years ahead of the British government. Every day lost is really counting against us. And I really hope that when the levelling up paper comes out, I believe in 2 weeks, but we've had quite a few full storms, that it'll make crystal clear, as the sixth carbon budget did, that combined authorities are in a unique position to take a strategic approach. We must get that environmental director on board ASAP. Otherwise, the combined effort of the unitary authorities and the unitary authorities and the Metro Mayor's function, the WECA function, won't be used to their best parts. So I really would urge that. I really think it's necessary. I understand we have to sort the buses out and strain every sinew, but that mustn't come at the expense of making this absolutely critical appointment, which is already 3 or 4 months too late. We must not waste another day. Thank you, Metro Mayor.
Thank you very much, Winston, and we've all listened carefully to that, and thank you for your measured and passionate comments. Okay, we now move to item 9, Mayoral and Combined Authority Budget 2022-23 and the medium-term financial forecast. This report asks the committee to consider and approve a revenue budget for the mayoral functions and for the West of England Combined Authority for 2022-23. Please note, because this is complicated, and I know people will see it that way, but just please note that on certain items, I do not have a vote under the Constitution due to an error in drafting when the Constitution was written initially. And I've asked the Secretary of State to sort out this slip of the pen, as it's clearly nonsensical for me not to have a vote on the budget. It's something we found ourselves with, we need to try and get sorted. I'd now like to move to the recommendations as set out in the report, please. Can I call for a seconder? Can I just correct? It's the order where there's been a slip of the pen, which is a sort of subset of the. Okay. To be clear, it's not the Constitution. It's a separate document. It still stops me voting on my budget. So thank you for that correction, Patricia. Okay, can I call for a seconder, please? Is there a seconder?
Chair, if I may start off the comments on this item, please. I wanted to make colleagues aware that I have circulated an amendment on this item. The amendment is in line with the comments that I made at Monday's WECA scrutiny meeting, which was my first opportunity to properly understand the decision reports that are before us today. To repeat the phrase I used at scrutiny, which Winston reminded me of, I did talk about the need for us to be straining every sinew as a combined authority to be maximising the resources available to support our local bus services. There's no getting away from the fact that the government does need to do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to funding our bus services. But so far, I'm not satisfied that we as a combined authority have done everything that we possibly can with the resources that we have now to prioritise bus services. And we've had representations to us today in the public submission section, as well as submissions at previous meetings. The loss of the 18 service in South Gloucestershire, communities like Bromley Heath now no longer being served by a bus because of rerouting and so forth. I think there is a sensible way that we're able to increase the resources available to support our bus services, to put an extra just shy of £400,000 into our financial firepower regionally. And it may well be the case that we need to have an adjournment in order to discuss that, particularly, as you say, given the voting arrangements on the budget today.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Well, why don't we have an adjournment if the other leaders are happy to do that, and let's try and get that sorted and worked out. How long do you fancy? How long do you think we need?
I would guess 10 minutes.
Let's go for 10 minutes. Okay, we adjourn for 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. Sorry about that adjournment. It actually took a while, but it was actually quite helpful, so thank you for your patience yet again. Okay, so I'm looking for a seconder for that first proposal. So, Kevin, thank you very much. So I now ask members to speak to the items if they see fit. Who would like to speak to this? Toby, you looking? You're just happy to go to... No one else wants to speak? No, okay, let's move to the vote then. Okay, the voting arrangements are different across the recommendations, just to make it even more straightforward. So we will take each recommendation in turn. Recommendation 1, to approve a transport levy. Those in favour, please show. None against and no abstentions. Okay, that is carried. Recommendation 2, to approve 50% of surplus investment income. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Recommendation 3, to approve the combined authority budget for 2022-23. Those in favour, please show. Okay, those against, abstentions. Okay, that's carried. Recommendation 4, no votes needed for this. This is, it notes that the combined authority's forecasted revenue outturn for 2021-22, and I ask the committee to note the recommendation 4. Thank you very much. Recommendation 5, to approve the mayoral budget for 2022-23, together with the funding contribution from the combined authority investment fund budget of £645,000, as set out in Appendix 4. Those in favour, please show. Sorry, Toby, you want to speak?
If I could just on this item, please,
Yep.
please, Chair, thank you. I'll just make my comments brief. Obviously, there were 3 parts to the amendment that I was looking to move. Following the discussions that we've had, not seeking to move the second and third parts of that amendment, but I think it would be helpful for the statutory finance officer to please give us some comments around the work that does go on to make sure that the combined authority is as efficient as possible.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Having spoken, those who are in favour, could you please show? Or we're doing that? Sorry, but, Malcolm, come in because it's the amendment. Sorry.
Yeah, happy to talk now if that's okay,
Yeah.
Chair. So I get the second amendment was really driving a assurance to the committee that the efficiency is challenged in the combined authority. So the discussion we had is that we have got a very strong relationship across the financial director groups in the region, and we do share financial information regularly with one another, and indeed meet on a weekly basis, on an informal basis, as well as formally on a monthly basis. We gave an undertaking that we would actually bring something back to the April committee to maybe formalise that a bit more going forward, so to ensure we continue that good practice, that we share financial information from combined authority in advance of publication, which we do already, and we work through the key issues affecting finances across the region. So we give that undertaking to agree words between myself and 151 officers, the financial directors of the region, to come back to April to formalise what we already do as good practice, if that's okay. The second point, I think the third amendment you tabled was around the overhead rates. And this is standard practice. It's no different to what's applied in the unitary authorities. You know, when you have a new capital project or a new service, you need to make sure you flex your authority to represent that you can still support that bigger range of core products. So given an undertaking, the information, the rate is exactly the same as it has been for the last 3 years, but I will work with my 151 colleagues just to recheck that rate again. It doesn't affect the budget report, doesn't affect the recommendations in the budget, but I've given an undertaking that I will work with my colleagues just to talk through the mechanics of that calculation to make sure all are happy with that 36.4%.
Okay, thank you very much, Malcolm. Appreciate that. Okay, Toby. In that case, can you you're proposing your amendment, presumably, or not?
No, Chair. So I think having received the assurances from the statutory finance officer, I'm not minded to move the second and third parts of my amendment.
Okay.
So the current recommendation is fine for me.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate your help. Okay, in that case, on that basis, we go back to the recommendation 5. That's the new one now? Or the same one? Same, new, yeah, whatever, how it's the same, okay. Same with assurances, okay, that's fine. So those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried then. Recommendation 6 notes the Mayoral Fund 2021-22 forecast revenue outturn as detailed in Appendix 5. No vote is needed on this, so I therefore ask the committee to note that recommendation. Noted. Thank you very much indeed. Recommendation 7 notes the financial reserve policy, and again, no vote needed, and I ask the committee to note recommendation 7, please. Thank you, Kevin. Recommendation 8, approve opting in to the public sector audit appointment framework for the commissioning of external audit services for the period 23-24 to 27-28. So those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, obviously none of those, so that's carried. Recommendation 9 to approve a transfer of £384,000 from the 2021-22 Transport Levy to the Transport Smoothing Reserve. Those in favour, please. Do you want? Yes. Yeah. Those in favour. You want to speak? Sorry. Okay.
Yes,
There we go.
yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, difficult to indicate whether I'm putting my hand up to speak or putting my hand up to vote. But I think this was the one where we have had those discussions. This did form the first part of my amendment, which would be a new recommendation replacing number 9, and this would forego the transfer of £384,000 of the 21-22 transport levy into a transport smoothing reserve. I think it actually is up on the screen there. The effect of which I think is to as I said previously, evidence our straining of every sinew to ensure that we are maximising our ability to mitigate the harm that our transport network is suffering from at the moment, and for us to be seen to be doing our bit as a combined authority to protect and restore services. Obviously, from my perspective, as the South Gloucestershire committee member, very concerned about some of the recent changes, including the number 18, the number 5, as well as more recently announced changes as well. We had a petition presented at our last meeting around that service, but local councils had worked closely with local media organisations to be able to express to the committee the strength of feeling that local residents have about that service. So I'm keen and supportive of us to do as much as we possibly can to be able to have as comprehensive a public transport network as possible in the challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Okay, thanks, Toby.
So I'm happy to propose that.
You're proposing that. Is there a seconder for that, please? Okay. Those in favour of that amendment, please show. Okay, that's carried as an amendment. So we go back to the new recommendation 9 now with the amendment. Does anyone want to speak on that? Kevin?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very quickly, I fully support Councillor Savage's amendment here, and I'm glad we've all come to an agreement on it. As, I think it's really, really important that we as a combined authority go out of our way to support particularly local bus routes that are in jeopardy. I think also we need to recognise from a combined authority perspective that the majority of the weight and responsibility for this lies with central government. And we as a combined authority, I would recommend write to central government to express that. But we at the same time do everything we can to alleviate the immediate pressure. But it's important for us to as a unified voice, lobby central government on this issue.
Okay, Kevin. Well, thank you for that. Perhaps it's appropriate for me to come in and just say, look, that work is already happening. I'm working with the MP for Bath and the other MPs across the west of England to that end, because we all share this particular concern. It's worrying us, and we're deeply worried about what's likely to happen. Marvin was making that point earlier in our meeting about what's going to happen later this spring. It's going to get pretty bad, and we want people to understand that we're doing everything we possibly can, and that government are going to have to do the heavy lifting to get this sorted. Okay, so in that case, those in favour of new recommendation 9, please. Can you show? Okay, that's carried. Recommendation 10, to approve the creation and transfer of £950,000 from the 2021-22 Transport Levy to a specified earmarked reserve fund, anticipated additional costs of maintaining continuity of bus services prior to the retender of major bus routes in August 2022. Does anyone want to speak on that? No? Okay, let's go to the vote then. Those in favour, please. Okay, that's carried. Okay, we're now on item 10, Capital Strategy Report 2022 to 2023, including Treasury Management and Investment Strategies. This report presents the capital strategy for the West of England Combined Authority, which includes the capital budget for 2022-23 and the indicative budget of up to 2024-25. It also includes the Treasury Management Strategy for 2022-23, and it also includes the Combined Authority Investment Strategy for 2021 to 2026. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report, please. Can I call for a seconder? Is there a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Kevin. Would anyone like to speak on this? Good. Okay. In that case, I'll now move to the voting. Let's start with recommendation A, to approve the capital budget as detailed in Appendix 1. So does anyone want to speak on this? No? Okay, in that case, can I ask those to show support in favour now? To do so now, please. Okay, that's carried in that case. Thank you. Recommendation B, note the updated Combined Authority Investment Strategy detailed in Appendix 2. There's no vote needed for that, so I therefore ask the committee to please note that recommendation B. Is that noted, please? Thank you. Recommendation C, to approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 2022-23 as detailed in Appendix 3. Anyone want to speak? No? Okay. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And recommendation D, to agree the specific highways and transport capital grant allocations totalling £25 million to the constituent councils for 2022-23 as set out in figure 3. Does anyone wish to speak to that? No? Okay, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried. Item 11, Investment Fund Programme. This report outlines the extension of the current programme to 2025-26, providing £450 million of funding overall. As I laid out at our last meeting, I'm determined to refocus the Combined Authority on delivery and delivering. This will involve changes now and over the forthcoming months. We have had constructive discussions as leaders about freeing up money to spend on current priorities. This will involve big choices that leaders have said they are willing to make which is good news for our region, and I thank them for that. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in this report. Can I please call for a seconder? Is there a seconder for this? Yeah. We are, yeah. So thank you for that, Kevin. That's seconded by Kevin, and thank you very much. Okay, now, sorry. Do you want a break? Yeah, oh yeah, of course, yeah, let's take a break. Is that okay? Can we just adjourn for 5, everybody? Yeah, just check with the other leaders. Is that okay? Thank you for patience, everybody. Okay, thank you again for your patience. We will now move on. So we've had a seconder for the report. So look, I now understand that Kevin Guy wishes to move an amendment on strategic master planning as follows. And I'll circulate this in writing to the leaders. In fact, they've already had it. And I'll read it out now. So it is as follows: to amend recommendation 1 to read as follows: to allocate £2 million for strategic master planning from the investment fund Headroom, and delegate the approval of feasibility and development funding applications to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the constituent councils. Can I please ask for a second? I'm happy to second that because that's your proposal. Okay, I second that. Would anybody like to speak to this item, please? Kevin?
Very briefly, and I'd just like to thank WECA officers and Baines officers for coming together on this. It's a really important issue. We've talked a lot about this as leaders, about making sure we get programmes that are ready to go and on the ground, and crucially able to deliver them. And this fund will make a massive difference to Bath and North East Somerset Council and ability to transform our transport department. So I really appreciate the support of the WECA Mayor and my fellow leaders and mayors on this one.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Anyone else wish to speak? Toby.
Thank you, Chair. Just as well as to echo Kevin's comments, as this does concern extending funding for the spatial development strategy, I'm looking forward to a series of dates that we can get in our diaries as mayors and leaders to be able to discuss this important document.
Okay, thank you very much. Marvin, did you want to speak on this one, please?
No, I just think I'd just add to that, actually. It was good to have had a chat amongst ourselves 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we did talk about the importance of us coming together, getting some maps out, and really getting our heads around how we're going to take on the challenge of meeting the current housing crisis, but obviously the housing crisis that will be growing as our population continues to grow. So really looking forward to getting that work together amongst ourselves.
Okay, thanks very much, Marvin. So can those in favour of the proposed amendment please show? Okay, that's carried. So that becomes, that amends recommendation 1. As I understand it. And then there's another amendment which I want to bring forward. Marvin, do you want to speak to this first, or do you want to propose it? Do you want me to propose it? I'm quite happy to do that if you want.
If you propose, then I'm happy to comment, Dan. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just check that I get that absolutely right. Is that the right one? It's not the right one, no. Bear with me a minute, please. It helps. Okay, thanks very much. Well, so I'll propose an amendment then, please. The amendment is as follows, that the committee, whether we add the following text to the report, please, and that the committee recognises the need for new public transport across the region and will build on the previous work carried out on mass transit, recognising that tunnels may be well needed in places where there are pinch points due to the historic nature of development, including, for example, the areas around Temple Meads and Gloucester Road in Bristol. Is that seconded, please?
Yeah, second.
Okay, would you like to speak to that, anybody?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We've challenges around this, so I just kind of want to lay out why, amongst the reasons why this is so important to us and why it's so important that, that we are clear in our commitment. So there are a number of areas that are of critical importance, we believe, not just to our local authority area, but to the region. And we know, we talked about them often. We've got to get homes built. We've got to get our flood defences in, and we need to solve our transport problems. The mass transit system we've been working on over the last few years is a key component of how we get a growing city around. It's going to be key to modal shift away from private cars. It's going to be key to decarbonising movement within the city as our public transport offering. We have had some concerns, which is why we're really keen to get the commitment today. In the initial CRSTS, we talked about £45 million at the high end. Was it come to the infrastructure fund in the autumn, it was at 25 million, and today we're at 5 million. So it's really important that we are not making space to see what could appear like a reducing financial commitment as a pathway to not delivering what is absolutely essential for any modern city that wants to meet its carbon targets. So we need that confidence built, and we need the commitments writ large. I'll just say, in terms of how we deliver this, which again comes into some of the challenges. I mean, this has to be a scheme that's delivered at the regional level, at the combined authority level, and actually with the joint committee as well. We hope that means that vehicle with combined authority officers meets the level of ambition for Bristol and the region that we've had. That financial journey is one that's caused us concern, as actually some of the questions that are rightly facing us at this moment in time is, where's the level of detail around this? Because we think that there is a level of detail that should have been worked up by now. Dates, costs, milestones. And what I would be keen of you coming into office as the Metro Mayor now is that we really drive this and make sure those dates, costs and milestones are actually in place, as we take solid steps towards this. I think progress must be quicker. We'd heard earlier on that there is no time to fail, no time to delay from Winston and Scrutiny. And as well as decarbonising our buildings, decarbonise our transport are going to be key components to us meeting, our targets. What I would hope for, Dan, is in with this commitment that we have in the current infrastructure fund paper, and with this amendment along with that, is a real commitment that as we come back in April, as we've talked about, that we commit to coming back with that planned programme of work, with clear indications of those dates, costs and milestones, with a clear commitment to the finances set against it. I mean, I'll say, just as well, finally, a scheme like this is a £4 billion plus scheme, and it cannot be delivered by making funding decisions on an annual basis about funding the next 12 months. If we're going to commit to delivering a mass transit system for the city region, we must be working over multiple year timeframes, and the finances have to match that framework. It's the way we're going to be taken seriously by investors, and the way we're going to be taken seriously by government, and ultimately the way we're going to be taken seriously by our population. So we do need to see that commitment, and I would welcome your words on that about committing to come back in April with that commitment writ large. But we do need to keep the momentum going on this, and and I thank you for bringing the amendment today, and I would welcome words of support from you for that April meeting as well.
Okay, hold on a second. Marvin, yes, I'm very happy to give you those assurances about us coming back in April in order to, I'm looking forward to working with you, frankly, because I think this is really important for all the reasons that you and others have said today, so that we get those time-dated and costed proposals on what resources we actually need, because we need resources to move this forward, to get to the next stage where we deliver a new public transport system for our region. Okay, so we've had the amendment proposed and seconded. Can we now vote on that amendment? Are you happy to do that? Okay, Marvin, are you happy to vote on that, or? Okay, so those in favour of that amendment, please show. Okay, thank you. So that's carried. So thank you, that's gone through. Thank you for that, Marvin, and everybody else. Okay, now, if you could just bear with me, everybody, because I've had another indication that I have to do something differently. Okay, thank you, everybody. If you could just bear with me, because I'm reading from the computer, because we've had to change our course slightly. Okay, on the recommendations then, the committee is asked to firstly vote on the allocation of 2 million for strategic master planning from the investment fund Headroom. Those in favour, please show. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, and that's carried in that case. And then the next one is to return the £11.7 million balance of the previous allocations for the land acquisition, development infrastructure and housing and regeneration enabling funds, Love Our High Streets, and for the business and skills to create further headroom. So those in favour of that, please show. Which is me, of course, yeah. Anybody else? Anyone against? Okay. Okay, 2 against. Any abstentions? Okay. Could I be reminded what happens in that instance? It falls. Okay. Thank you. And then the next one is to approve the full business case for the Midsummer Norton High Street Market Square project and award £770,000 of additional funding. Are those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. And then to approve the full business case for Common Connections, an award of £999,000 subject to confirmation of the match funding. Could those in favour please show now? Toby, yes, of course, please speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say a few words on this particular project, which I think is a really exciting one for the Kingswood area, creating and expanding priority habitats and improving the accessibility of these habitats. This is a project that has got the potential to create a really strategically important green infrastructure running all the way from Lyde Green south to Willsbridge, incorporating many existing commons, nature reserves and other sites of important ecological interest. This will produce significant environmental and biodiversity net gain and increased and to boost local ecosystems. Ultimately, this is helping us to mitigate the impact of climate change and to make our environment and nature more resilient and adaptable to its impacts. So very much welcome this funding. I'm very grateful to the work of officers at South Gloucestershire Council for working on this project and look forward to its delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toby. Appreciate that. So could I ask for those in favour to please show? Thank you, that's carried. The next one is please to approve the feasibility and development funding application for the Bath River Line, the Bristol Bath Railway Path Extension, and an award of £75,000. I'm imagining, Kevin, you might want to speak on this.
Thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, no, this is a project that lots of people talk to me about in and around Bath, and I'm so pleased that we're able to move it forward. It's transformational. We've had 2 really difficult years. And this is a project that will help people get out and about, support sustainable transport, which is the future. It's all about making people's lives greener and improving people's well-being. So I'm really pleased that we're able to move forward on this. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Kevin. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Okay, in that case, those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And then the next one, please, is to delegate approval to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the Constituent Councils to enter into funding agreements related to the delivery of the Temple Quarter Regeneration Programme, should there be any urgency prior to the next committee meeting. Does anyone wish to speak to that at all? Marvin.
Dan, we made, I think over recent weeks, we've actually, made some forward steps actually in a positive way. But this is one of those areas we do just have to be aware that we need to have real substance behind the term "in consultation with," that phrase. There have been some frustrations in the past about the declaration of being in consultation and what practice actually meant. So we just need to be sure that that is a genuine conversation, because it can save us a whole load of pain down the stream if we've had the conversations upstream to make sure we're in alignment. So just for me to log that and ask you to continue to work on that.
Well, I'm happy for you to log that, Marvin, and of course all officers will have heard that, because they all have to make this happen, don't they, and make this process meaningful. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience with that, and thank you to the leaders for your help so that we got that through. It was very complicated, but thank you so much. Okay, we're now on item 12, please. This is the investment fund change requests. This sets out the changes requested to the schemes in the current investment fund programme. And as I've said, I don't think it's right to just nod through delay after delay, and I want a focus on delivery. So this paper seeks to create a new system whereby a collective proposal for the management and mitigation of project delays is created, and this will involve a transparent process in public. I'd now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder, please? Is there a seconder? Thank you, Kevin. Would you like to speak to that, Kevin? No? Okay. Would any other members like to speak on this? Toby, thank you.
Just to reiterate a point that I made earlier in the meeting today, seeing as the spatial development strategy is referenced here, I look forward to us meeting as mayors and leaders as soon as possible to be able to discuss this important document.
Okay, thank you, Toby, and I'll make sure my officers get on to you to make that happen. Okay. Right. Marvin, did you want to speak? Sorry.
And I guess it's quite a one that's close to heart. Just to emphasise that point, and this is nothing we don't already know, but I think in my 6 years, 5.5 years to date, some of the biggest controversies come when you're actually trying to do something. You don't end up with controversy if you're not doing anything. And one of the biggest things you can do to have controversy is actually commit to building, right? And changing the physical nature of a place. And that is whether homes are close to people, is it a brownfield site, how much did it cost, what's your share of affordable, impact on the local ecology, travel to work zones. And I just emphasize again that the sooner that we can actually have those conversations, look at the rationale for where we are committing to develop, make sure we're getting the best out of them as possible on environmental, carbon, ecological grounds, but surfacing those potential tensions. I think the sooner we can do that, the better.
I completely agree, Marvin, because focusing on delivery doesn't make it happen just because you wish it to be the case.
Chair, thank you. I didn't talk about the SDS in my opening note, but for the business community, getting an integrated approach to housing delivery is vitally important for the economic functioning. So we're pleased to see that funding continues, and the business community would like to ensure that there's the opportunity for proper engagement and consultation as part of that process.
to help to ensure that we're aligned around their activities to the overall strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you for all your comments. I'll now move to the voting in that case. The voting is the same for all the recommendations, so I'll take this vote on block. So those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. And the next item is item 13. Am I right with that, Alex? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Item 13, Regional Recovery and Adaptions Fund. As we know, Omicron has hit many people hard in the west of England, especially those working in the hospitality sector in our region. There are also other non-COVID challenges, of course, facing the west of England, such as the supply chain issues that saw empty shelves and queues at petrol stations last year. And there are other significant challenges that we face as we go further into 2022. This report seeks to approve additional funding to support the next phase of regional recovery and adaptation, to make our region more resilient. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder? Is there a seconder, please? Okay, thank you. Kevin, you got there slightly before Toby. So Kevin, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak on this, Kevin? No, I thought you wouldn't. Any other members wish to speak? Marvin.
So I'm going to reiterate a point, but then explain as to why. One is, again, we've got the phrase in consultation with. Again, I've just emphasized that needs to be real. And there are a number of reasons for that. It's not just about including LAs for the sake of it. It's about the expertise and the connectivity we have. So I think one of the big dangers that's been thrust upon us, and you'll know this with COVID, is that it's the poorest, the most marginal who've been hit first and hardest, and then they'll be least well placed to benefit from any economic recovery when it comes, and maybe even most distant from the support packages that will come through. I think what you find at that very local level, there'll be a lot of fantastic connectivity to networks that are reaching the people that would not ordinarily be getting those support packages. So to get hold of that expertise and that connectivity, I think has been absolutely essential to the integrity of our recovery. I mean, I'll just give you an example, Black Southwest Network, for example, and its connectivity to BME-led business. So we're doing so much work on economic inclusion. It'd be really important to make sure that we are absolutely putting that front and center of our recovery work.
Thank you, Marvin. Appreciate that. So look, thank you everybody for your comments. I'll now move to the voting on the single recommendation. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 14, Green Recovery Fund. In December of last year, we agreed the Green Recovery Fund, which is an important tool to help us reach our ambitious and necessary net zero targets. And we've heard Winston and others talk about the importance of that today. This report includes indicative allocation by priority theme and outlines the process for developing and assessing proposals. I'm having a good day reading today. There is much work to be done, but it is clear we can make a big difference by focusing on certain areas, including retrofitting, which is something that I think has more impact for investment than anything else we can to help the environment. I'd now like to move to the recommendation as set out on the report. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Toby, thank you. It's a bit of variety. Thank you very much. That's great. Would you like to speak, Toby, on this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will. Just to say very much welcome the next stage of the Green Recovery Fund. We've obviously been able to increase the size of it as part of its journey through this committee. I see that there is a commitment in here to work with the councils and with other stakeholders to ensure that we're able to make the best possible use and to sort of maximise that green recovery. Also, I've talked earlier around the work that we're doing with the Commons Connection project and indeed others that we are working on as well, and looking forward to being able to demonstrate some really meaningful impact to our residents, businesses and communities on our determination to drive that green recovery regionally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Toby. Appreciate that. Okay, well, I have to say I agree, and I was very excited by Marv's plan. Sorry. Kevin, did you indicate? Sorry, I missed that. Please come in.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I support what Toby's just said there. I think I'm so pleased that we've been able to at least double this fund up to £50 million. Winston's made some excellent points earlier about we need action on this topic now to get to net zero. It's the most pressing issue of our day by a long way. But I also want to reiterate that we need to be cautious and mindful of how we spend this money and make sure that it's invested wisely. We're living in a housing crisis. We've also got bills that are soaring across the nation, so it's part of retrofitting is such an important part of this bill, and making sure we were able to save people's energy bills and make sure we do that in a sensible, joined up approach, that we're spending taxpayers' money in the best possible way, but also making a difference to those people who really need it, but need it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Kevin. Well, look, I agree with the comments, all the comments that have been expressed actually. And, you know, I'm quite excited about this, and, you know, I had discussions with all the leaders in various ways, but, you know, Marv and I were talking about green roofs we discussed earlier in the month, and that sort of thing I really think is important. So I'm really excited by this. So thank you again. So look, thank you. Oh, Marvin, sorry, you wanted to speak? Sorry. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
I
Please
like
come in.
talk of green roofs and green walls. We're all up for that. Got to get the expertise in place, which comes which is the point. You can't get this stuff without paying for it. There's a few things that I would just say. As we talk about green recovery, we should never let that separate itself from inclusive recovery. The two things go hand in hand. The poorest and most marginal, again, get hit first and hardest by the consequences of climate change. And as we go through the economic structure, and we must go through to decarbonize the economy, I think they're also most at risk of falling through the cracks as we go through that economic restructuring. And then you can end up with a number of people who are quite justifiably angry at, and excuse my categorizations here, quite comfortably off middle class people talking about decarbonisation while they can't pay their bills, right? Or they're facing increasing costs because we're trying to dissuade them from their lifestyles. We can't afford to have that. I wonder, Dan, if we can talk to the officers about making some commitments within the financial spend that will happen around this to local supply chains, local employment. We have talked about that with some of our contractors, so that from Hartcliffe to Patchway, I'm thinking of an area in Baines, to Southmead, those areas that often are left behind by these conversations can see pounds coming in, and we get that local multiplier going. And we can put some hard targets around that potentially. I just want to say something, because something Winston said earlier, and I do think it's right. We haven't got time to wait. But there are other proverbs around this, such as, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You know, measure twice, cut once. So it is important we do move fast, but we move right. And I think one of the dangers we've seen from national governments of all backgrounds is announcing huge sums of money and thinking the job was done. And then we end up with collections of disconnected projects that in and of themselves might be good, but do not give us the system change we actually need. And I think the challenge of decarbonisation is not in a project here and a project there. It's actually changing the fundamental systems that underpin life in our city region. The energy system, right, the transport system, the food system. Because that's how it's going to be sustainable change, and not just change as long as the funding is there. So I would say let's move, but let's move, as you've talked about as well, with a plan, a coherent plan that talks about a 10, 15, 20-year system change journey for our city region.
Thank you very much, Marvin. I couldn't agree more with that, frankly. And the truth is, it's a complicated task and a tough task, so we do need to work together, because we will miss things if we don't do it that way. Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. I'll now move to the voting on the single recommendation, please. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And then do I take the next one? Yes, or are we? Sorry, excuse me. Oh, Okay, in that case, we now move to item 15, City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement. This report seeks agreement from members on the submission of the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement to the Department for Transport on the 31st of January 2022. This is the large amount of money, over £500 million, 540 million to be exact, we secured from the government to spend on transport, the highest per head amount in the country, as I've mentioned earlier in this meeting, a fact I think we can be very proud of. But of course, we need even more money, significant amounts of money, and we need to make big choices because we've got to get this right. And some of the choices are not easy necessarily. But what is vital to do is to show the government that how we spend the money is done in a wise and timely manner, or we won't be getting more money from them, and we need that. I'd like to move the recommendations now, please, as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder? Is there a seconder for that, please? Toby, thank you. Sorry, Marvin, I think Toby just beat you there. Okay, would you like to speak, Toby?
I will, thank you, Chair. Just to say, very much welcome this report today and the very significant funding that government is making available to us to invest here in transport in the west of England. I would just like to recognise, as part of welcoming this report, and indeed it's one of the recommendations that we'll come on to, but I'll just make the comments now. I think are the very significant local contributions that each of the councils have made as part of this. That was critical in demonstrating to government our seriousness and our level of commitment to driving forward with those transport improvements across the region. And that, in the case of South Gloucestershire Council, that is £21 million, which we will be discussing at our cabinet meeting later next month. So otherwise, I welcome the report, Chair, and happy to second it.
Thank you very much indeed, Toby. Does anyone else want to speak on this, please? Kevin, Marvin? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, can we now move to the vote on the recommendations? We'll move all those recommendations 1 to 6 on block, if I may, please. So will all those in favour please show now? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we're now on item 16. On bus tap-on, tap-off project. This report updates members on the development of the on-bus tap-on, tap-off project and seeks approval of the full business case. The plan is that people will be able in the West of England region with time to be able to tap on and tap off buses using the debit card, like many people do, of course, in London and elsewhere. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder on this one, please? Marvin, thank you very much. Okay, would you like to speak, Marvin? No. Would anyone else like to speak? No. Okay, thank you for that. So I'll now move to voting on the single recommendation. Will those in favour please show now? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very, very much indeed. Item 17, Enhanced Partnership Plan and Scheme for Buses. This report provides an update on the development of a joint Enhanced Partnership Plan and Scheme for Buses. This is a very early stage report, I must add, but important one nonetheless for our ambition to create a better bus network for all our passengers. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Is there a seconder for this, please? Thank you, Kevin. Do you wish to speak to that, Kevin? No. Anyone else wish to speak? No. Okay, thank you. In that case, please can I move to the voting? So can I ask that the committee note recommendation 1? Is that noted, please? Thank you. And then will those in favour please now show? Thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, item 18, Supported Bus Services Procurement. This report sets out the arrangements for carrying out the procurement of bus service contracts due to expire in August, September later this year in 2022. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Is there a seconder for this, please? Thanks, Toby. Appreciate that. Would you like to speak to that, Toby?
Thank you, Chair. Just to, I think, reiterate a point that colleagues have made in earlier reports, just around really stressing the importance of that collaboration and involvement, particularly with our transport leads in the within each of our councils, who do have knowledge and expertise and a commitment to want to maximise the the comprehensiveness of our bus network across the region, and I very much hope that collaborative working continues after the recommendations that we will hopefully approve shortly.
Thanks very much, Toby. Anyone else wish to speak? Kevin?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, just to add to what Toby's just said there, I think it's also important that we look beyond WECA with this one, particularly, work with our other partners in Wiltshire and Mendip, etc. We've got a lot of connectivity, obviously North Somerset as well. It's vital that we work collaboratively with everybody in our region. So yeah, I fully support this, and let's get going.
Thanks very much, Kevin. A point well made. Marvin, do you want to speak on this, please? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, I'll move to the voting, please. The voting same for all the recommendations 1 through to 4 inclusive, so I will take a vote on block, please. Will all those in favour please show? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Now move to item 19, Adult Education Budget Approach for the 2022-23 academic year. This report sets out details of the proposed approach for the management and administration of the devolved adult education budget for the years 2020 or the year 2022-23. It also includes details of the proposal from the Combined Authority for National Skills Funding Bootcamp Wave 3 funding, no less. So there you are. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Marvin, I think, was first. Okay, thank you, Marvin. Do you wish to speak on this, Marvin? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? No. Kevin?
Very briefly, just to reiterate what Marvin said earlier about ensuring people have the right skills as well. Yep. Ties quite nicely into our Green Recovery Fund, and it gives us quite a coherent message across most papers that we're doing here. It's about supporting all of our communities, particularly the ones that need their uplifting the most. So yeah, really supporting this item. Thank you very much, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. And can I please ask the committee to note recommendation 2? Is that noted, please? Yes, someone going to note it? Thank you very much. Okay, the voting is same for all the recommendations 1 to 3, so we'll take a vote on block. So will all those in favour please show now? Thank you, Marvin, and everyone else. Okay, that's carried. We move now to item 20, report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. This is the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Just to remind people, as I mentioned earlier, I've declared an interest and will not vote on recommendation 1. Please note that if approved by the committee, the panel's recommendations can be funded within the base budget for 2022-23, utilising savings generated through not remunerating a deputy mayor. Is there a mover, please, for the recommendation as set out in the report? Is there any movers going to put forward on this? Okay, no movers. Okay. In that case, that falls. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Position. I'm not saying if there's an independent remuneration panel, I just think just accept what they say. That's mine, and I have to stick with that.
So will you move that in that case, please?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Can I call for a seconder? Okay, thank you, Kevin. Would you like to speak to it, Kevin?
Exactly in the same lines that independent remuneration panels, the whole purpose of having them is that they're independent. So yeah, happy to go with their advice.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Does anyone else wish to speak? Toby?
I will, thank you, Chair. So this matter was considered by the Independent Remuneration Panel back in 2020. I took a particular position on that report at that time. I and intend to be consistent with my position on that
Thank you very much indeed. So thank you for all your comments. I now move to the voting in that case. We will take these votes individually against each recommendation, noting that I obviously won't be voting in recommendation 1. So if we go in turn, recommendation 1, will all those in favour please vote now? Thank you very much, Marvin and Toby. Those abstaining, please show. That's fine, Toby. And those against, clearly none. Okay, the next recommendation is, let me just have a look. 2, right. Where is 2? There it is. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. In that case, will those in favour please show on recommendation 2 now? Thank you. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation 3, of course, is next. Will those in favour please vote now? Thank you very much indeed. That's carried. And then recommendation 4, that an allowance for the chair of the audit committee be set at £5,625 with effect from May 2021. Will all those in favour please vote now? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Recommendation 5, can all those in favour please show now? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And recommendation 6, will all those in favour please vote now? Okay, again, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is urgent items or item of business, and this relates to the appointment of an interim monitoring officer and interim section 73 officer. This urgent report seeks endorsement of the appointment of Stephen Gerrard as Interim Director of Legal Services, Statutory Monitoring Officer and Statutory Data Protection Officer, and of Richard Ennis as Interim Director of Investment and Corporate Services, Statutory Section 73 Officer. Interviews were carried out with John McCormick, the Monitoring Officer, and David Perry, Chief Executive Officer, both of South Gloucestershire Council. Thank you. I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder, please? Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. Would you like to comment? No? Anyone else like to comment on this? No? Okay. In that case, will all those in favour please show now? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, this combined authority meeting now closes. That's the end of our business for today. We'll now take a short rest break because I know people are coming in and out for the next joint committee meeting. So can I suggest, how long do people need? 10, 15? What time is it now? I've lost track of time. Yep, we'll return at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And waiting. It's been quite a day, hasn't it, for those who haven't been here already. I certainly think Richard Bonner deserves a long service medal, if nothing else, for enduring during our proceedings. But thank you anyway. So look, welcome to everybody to this meeting of the West of England Joint Committee today. I'm Dan Norris, the Combined Authority, and we also have Kevin Guy from Bath and North East Somerset Council to my left, Toby Savage to my left too, and also Marvin Rees from Bristol City Council. Toby is from South Gloucestershire Council, I should have said. And we have Councillor Don Davis. Welcome, Don. We didn't have you in our previous meeting, you'd be pleased to know. And it's very good to see you. And Don, of course, is the leader of North Somerset Council. And we also have Richard Bonner here today, who's the chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership and a non-voting member of the Joint Committee. You're very welcome again, Richard. It hasn't changed since I welcomed you a few hours back. Okay. Before we move on to the main agenda items, I would just like to mention that some members of the public are joining this meeting today to present their statements. Just to note, please, that all the statements received have been circulated and read by committee members and are also available to view on our website. So the first item is item 2 to proceed to. Apologies for absence. None have been received today. The next item is item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members here have any interest to declare, please? Can't see anybody. In that case, not. We'll move to item 4, minutes of the previous meetings. The minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of December have been circulated with the meeting papers. I do not believe, this is me speaking as myself now, I do not believe that they are totally accurate. Item 9 states, and I quote, "The chair, i.e. me, welcomed the clarification given in this report on the voting arrangements," close quotation, which I would like to suggest is changed to, in speech marks, "The chair said he did not formally note the report," close speech marks. And item 10 and item 14, the votes are not recorded, so please could it be added, the following: 4 in favour, 1 against for those items. Are members happy for those amended minutes to be confirmed as a correct record of that meeting, please? Toby.
Chair, sorry, had that revised wording been circulated? Is that in one of our attachments? I couldn't quite follow what the change was from you reading it out, I'm afraid, Chair.
Shall we give it to you? Does that help? You can see what exactly is going on.
A physical copy, I think, would be useful.
Yeah, sorry, Toby, because it is confusing, and you do need to know these things. Okay, Toby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm okay with that change to the minutes, but I think just in future, I think if there are going to be changes to the proposed minutes, if they could be circulated in advance. I appreciate sometimes it's not always possible, but when it is, the sooner we all get this.
Happy to do that, Toby. And if we hadn't had such a busy previous meeting, I'm sure I would have thought to do that, but I didn't, and I'm sorry about that, guys. As you can see, it's straightforward, really, but you do need to get more notice, because you're quite right. You shouldn't have to deal with it on the spot like that. So we will make a note of that. Thank you very much. So in that case, let me just make sure I am in the right place. Are members therefore happy, pleased, for these amended minutes to be confirmed as a correct record of the meeting? Is that okay? Thank you very much, guys. Great. Item 5, Chair's announcement. I have none. Item 6, items from the public. There's up to half an hour for this item. That starts off with questions. 29 questions were submitted for this meeting. And as usual, details have been circulated and written answers have been sent to the questioners. And these are published on the website along with the agenda papers. And then statements are also items from the public, of course, and we've received a whopping 69 statements today, the vast majority on one item. We have made arrangements for some members of the public here today, and welcome to everybody, to join this meeting to present their statements where they have requested to do so. Up to 3 minutes per statement will be permitted today, and I'd be grateful if the individuals making statements could please summarize their points so that we, as we've read all the statements which are published on our website, and you will hear someone call out just before the 3 minutes are up with about 30 seconds to go, and my experience is it often makes people a bit surprised, so I don't want to surprise anyone. We'll voice reminding you of the time limit. Okay, so if I can call the speakers in turn, people I'm expecting today are as follows. So David Redgewell, who spoke earlier. David, here you are, you're on again.
Thank you. On this point, can I just make the point, obviously, bus service is very important, and when we set up the pasture forum, can we just make sure it includes Councillor Don Davis is Vice Chair, because our BSIP is with North Somerset Council, so it's a joint arrangement, so we do need to work through the pastures with North Somerset. That can be noted. I want to talk about the 3 hubs on here, really. First one is Weston, where I'm very grateful, £6.8 million on new bus interchange. But I do want the Mayor and Councillor Davis to look at the design of the bus shelters. I have an issue. It's an interchange. We need RTI. We need facilities. I'm heavily involved in design, so I kick myself if I got it wrong. But I'm not happy with the shelters. Everything else I'm happy with. Those shelters aren't fit for a regional interchange, Dan, and we need Dan to look at them. Maybe we should swap them, but they should be bus station standard. And Weston is a very, very important interchange on our bus network. So if that could be work in progress, maybe we could swap the shelters, Patricia, with some other shelters and put stuff in there that really works for bus passengers and coach passengers that are crossing the network into Somerset, as well as North Somerset and WECA. On Thornbury, now I'd be careful here, I'm the trustee with the transport responsibility of South Gloucestershire Council's Disability Equalities and Network, and I'm also a trustee of Bristol City Council sponsored Bristol Disability Equalities Forum. I'm the transport bit, I'm not the planning bit, so I make that clear for those in the room. But on Thornbury, the issues that we're still concerned about is working with WECA officers to make sure we've got the bus elements right. And that is about making sure that we've got bus elements in the high street right, designs of shelters, layovers for stagecoach and first group buses in Rock Street. And we need your officers, Patricia, to become involved in the debate. At the moment, it's just purely South Gloucestershire, and I was on a call for 2 hours yesterday on it. It was a Zoom call. So it needs WECA engagement. On the issue of the high street, well, it's mixed views in all directions there, but in principle, from a disability point of view, we just want to make sure it's safe for the buses to run through, that we've got wide enough pavements, drop curbs, and a design that fits with the... And Thornbury's a market town in Gloucestershire, feeds both ways into the Severn Vale, but it's also very important to Marvin as a commuter settlement for Bristol. And provides services into Bristol, and we'll take housing growth for Bristol.
30 seconds, please,
okay.
David.
So, and then the other one I want to talk about is Bath, and just simply to say on Bath Quays, I'm happy, but I've got a Grampian condition in there, which Kevin might not like, which protects the coach station. So if we are going to move that coach station down with your money, we need to work Odd Down Park and Ride for coaches and Brislington Park and Ride, so we can bring these services into those two park and rides if we're going to shuttle into the city centre. So that's work in progress at Bath, and we do need to solve the coach issue and the interchange issue at Bath. So those, my three issues are interchanges, making sure we work together on the WECA interchange strategy.
Thank you very much, David. And I'm always impressed at how you make 30 seconds seem like a minute. So well done. Okay. The next person, there are several people who indicated that they might speak, but if I miss anyone out, please hold your hand up at the end, but I'll go through the names that I'm aware of. So Rob Galpin for Thornbury Town and District Residents Association, reference Thornbury High Street. Welcome, Rob. Please do make your statement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I've distributed a copy of an email we sent at 2 o'clock this morning, which was in response to the statements and questions to which we received copies of them at 7 o'clock yesterday evening. The mayors and leaders will have seen this. Essentially, we ask that Thornbury High Street be removed from today's agenda and put back at a later date. Allow discussions for Thornbury High Street at today's meetings, but delay taking a vote until a later meeting, once members have had a chance to digest and ramifications of, as you've heard, the numerous statements and questions. Delay discussion until such time as SGC have responded in full to our freedom of information questions, which are not due till the end of May, although they should have come in by Christmas. Or allow an increase to the 30 minutes allowed at the meeting, that we can cross-reference statements and questions. Thank you. After that, I'd just like to go into our statement. So is there any response to that, or do I just carry through?
Please carry on, Rob.
Thank you. Right, this is a statement from Thornbury residents. If there's time later, I'd like to do my own statement, but I gather from Ian that that may not be possible. We request that South Gloucester Council put their current proposals for Thornbury High Street to one side, at least until June 22, when SGC claim they will eventually respond to the many questions in our freedom of information requests, some 8 months after they were first raised. This will allow time to conduct a full, fair, respectful consultation with the public. It will also enable time for plans to be prepared that are relevant to Thornbury, its users and businesses. Would it not be best to assess the problems, come up with some potential solutions, test these with the community, and then agree together on a suitable way to progress? Consultation. These are definitions from Collins English Dictionary. You ask for their opinion and advice about what you should do. Talk and exchange ideas and opinions in order to find out some information. Shamefully, SGC prefers definition appears to be to impose one's will upon.
30 seconds, please.
Right. Fortunately, you've got the rest of the comments in there, so I shall just go to the end. We understand that WECA members may be reluctant to withhold support to fellow councillors in their quest for funding. However, SGC do not deserve support from any quarter until such time that they carry out a full, fair and respectful consultation with residents of Thornbury, the outlying villages that rely upon the High Street, and of course the businesses in the High Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob, for that. Appreciate that. Is Peter Travis here, please? Peter? Can you hold your hand up if you're here, Peter? If not, okay. If you come in later, Peter, let me know, or you're under a chair or something. Is it Gil or Jill Gilroy at Thornbury High Street? Sorry, how do you say your name, sir? Gil. Hi, thank you, Gil. Please, would you speak?
Thank you. I've lived in Thornbury for 40 years, and in all of that time, the High Street has been the beating heart and the soul of our community in Thornbury, which has now been brutally ripped apart. We, the residents of Thornbury, believe South Gloss Council have not carried out a full, fair and respectful consultation or impact study on the changes to Thornbury High Street, on economic, traffic management or environmental impact. It is therefore a bewilderment to Thornbury residents why South Gloss Council is so persistent in going ahead with this scheme when 90% of residents have rejected the High Street changes. The changes have only served to reduce retail footfall and income to our local shops, following the application of COVID emergency measures, which are now to be made permanent. It has evolved into a street that is more dangerous now to pedestrians than it ever was before. Why have the revised version of the Council's vision and their future plans based on this have not been put to the public for full and unbiased consultation and comment prior to the undertaking of any permanent works? How are South Gloss able to justify their claims for the scheme, which has already been rejected by a majority of Thornbury residents, including 6 of the 9 groups contacted who opposed the changes? South Gloss Council have been unable to produce substantiated answers to 2 Freedom of Information requests submitted by Thornbury and District Residents Association, which has been available to the Council already carried out the following necessary impact assessments via information obtained prior to and after the application of emergency measures in the town centre on economic, traffic management, environmental and health. The current diversionary route on the narrow road of Rock Street has resulted in regular traffic congestion, including gridlock during rush hours. Additionally, this route has caused substantial pollution, shifting the combined airborne traffic pollution into one route, resulting in a number of health issues for residents living there. For the first time ever, respiratory issues for a number of residents living along that Rock Street route are now being recorded. Pollution, not experienced before the changes to the High Street, is now so great that those residents unable to open windows and have purchased air purifiers, and sitting outside in their gardens is now not an option. All of this because South Gloss Council has not carried out a full, fair and respectful consultation or impact study on the changes to Thornbury High Street. Thank you. I hope that was in time.
Perfect, Gil. Thank you very much. Heard that beautifully. Thank you. Is John Reynolds here, please? John, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you. South Gloucestershire Council's report to Cabinet on the 7th of June 2021 was heavily reliant upon the report produced by massaging the figures from a biased public survey to justify closing Thornbury High Street. What is more damning is that the Council did not undertake any movement survey of traffic, pedestrians and cycles in Thornbury Town Centre until the 15th and 17th of July 2021, so that the decision by Cabinet 1 month earlier to go for permanent changes was based on a complete lack of up-to-date information and was therefore misinformed and terminally flawed. The movement survey in the outline business plan is also meaningless, since it only reveals figures obtained in 2 days in a summer month and cannot be compared to any pre-COVID survey figures nor any winter month figures. For this reason, the statistical base of the Council's outline business plan is far too narrow and is untenable. There are also glaring errors in that survey and the derived statistics and traffic modelling, such as not counting pedestrian movements within the High Street, not counting pedestrian movements to and from Castle Court car park, predicating a traffic model based on buses in Rock Street stopping only for 30 seconds, and not counting the number of cyclists who actually stopped in the High Street to do shopping rather than using it as a shortcut. The entire scheme to make changes to Thornbury High Street was therefore a rushed job in a compressed time frame, not based on common sense comparisons of summer and winter, of pre and post-COVID, and not based on longer term auditing so as to eliminate statistical aberrations caused by, for example, reliance on figures obtained on only 2 days in the same week. For this reason, South Gloucestershire Council needs to go back to the drawing board on all counts. Start with viable proposals backed by current information. Consult with the public fully and in the right way, and develop a plan which meets both the requirements of the high street traders and the support of the town's residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Appreciate that. Is Malcolm Best here, please? Malcolm's also speaking about Thornbury High Street. Thank you, Malcolm.
I'm reassured that you have copies of my statement in front of you. I'm not going to read it verbatim because it contains quite a bit of detail and references to the business plan. My statement relates to serious errors and miscalculations that I've identified in the economic appraisal. The economic appraisal makes claim that £3.7 million of benefit value can be accrued from derived from physical activity, essentially increased cycling and walking. A further combined £2.1 million of benefit value is accrued and derived from economic efficiency, essentially reduced traffic congestion. A total of £5.9 million, which is just over 90% of the supposed benefit value. But there are serious flaws in these calculations. To start with, the most overriding biggest flaw is the base case, as how it's defined in the business plan. Interim scheme currently in situ. This is ridiculous. This is like saying you create a problem, let it fester for 18 months, and then claim credit for solving it. Ridiculous. The project started in June 2020. It's already been running for 18 months and £700,000 has been spent on it. So it cannot be concluded to be the base case. The economic assessment includes the propensity to cycle tool, and has been used to calculate and predict cycle traffic in and around the town. But this tool specifically says it is intended to be used to evaluate increased cycle user potential on an origin to destination basis, journey to work commuting basis. For origin and destination journeys, work in the super lower area. Depending on the policy environment and infrastructure support that has been provided to encourage travel along those journeys. Looking at some of the reference detail in the report, like the Cycle City Ambition report, it all relates to urban city journeys, where 4 kilometres of segregated cycle lane have been provided, 7 kilometres of aggregated superhighway, 16 kilometres canal towpath. It is
30 seconds, please.
It is preposterous to believe that 200 metres of cycle lane on Thornbury High Street is going to encourage anyone to move and cycle into the town. I've obviously run out of time, but the pedestrian calculation for physical health benefit is also totally flawed, and the predicted efficiency for car movements and congestion is, as I said, It's based on a problem that's been created by this project and therefore cannot be included in the benefit calculation. The value for money statement now is very poor by your classification. It's between 0 and 1. I seriously advise you to look at my report and review the economic savings and benefits you've concluded. This report is not fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Malcolm. Is Andrew Chubb here today? Andrew's indicated he might want to speak. He's not come today. Okay. In that case, is there anybody else who was hoping to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Let me just check if that's in order, because I'm not quite sure what the rules are. It's at my discretion, in which case I allow it. Sorry. It's at my discretion, apparently, in which case I allow it.
Thank you. So this is my own one as a resident. The outline business case has been through 10 drafts, and yet it's vague, not even vaguely fit for purpose. According to the document history, either Atkins or the council have originated, checked, reviewed and authorised the outline business case on each occasion. So in theory, it's been subject to close scrutiny on 40 occasions. How come the outline business case is so littered with errors? Anyone with even a casual acquaintance with Thornbury and fair practice would have picked up many of these errors. It's unbelievable that such a shoddy document has firstly been produced and secondly deemed suitable as a basis to apply for funding. There are 3 periods that could have been used, as my colleague said: pre-pandemic, pandemic 20 to 21 and 24 onwards. The business case is based upon B and C, whereas it should be based on A and C, pre-pandemic and living with COVID. The writers of the report compounded their situation with unsuitable statistics, references and models. Through a combination of arrogance and creative use of erroneous information, the business cases were produced with wildly inaccurate, misleading figures. 700,000 has been spent already, with a further 4 million to go. If only a fraction of that sum was spent to refurbish the high street, it would leave £3 to £4 million to provide safe walk-in and cycling routes from the fringes of Thornbury into the town centre. But these seem to be forgotten, although they are really central to the fact. Metro mayors consistently indicated funds would only be released if the council could show full, fair and respectful consultation. The SDC have recently and abruptly changed the route to apply for funding. Is this an admission they realise that consultations to date are not full, fair and respectful? It's difficult to come to any other conclusion. SC thought the community would appreciate their intervention at the start of the pandemic, supposedly to reduce the spread of COVID, but with the ulterior motive of making pedestrianisation, road closure and traffic diversion permanent. Toby Savage eventually admitted that their proposals were divisive. As time goes by, opposition to the problems has grown. The public has experienced at first hand the problems caused by the temporary measures and understands the underhand way in which the council have acted throughout. This has brought the community together rather than being divisive. The Residents' Association has recently conducted research with the high street businesses to find out if and when the council approached them regarding the viability of their businesses. It appears that they were not approached either before introduction to pedestrianisation, road closure and traffic diversion, or subsequently. In conclusion, the council should withdraw their bid for funding. The high street should revert to the situation as it was in 2019. The council should draw up new proposals for Thornbury based upon a full, fair and respectful consultation. Only then should a bid for funding be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Now, thank you to everyone who has submitted a statement today. All the comments have been noted, and where they relate to agenda items will be taken into account by the committee today. I know you've written a letter specifically to me about these issues, and I will come back to that later on the agenda at item 9, I think it is, where I'll comment on what you've asked me, because I've just had a chance to sort of read it. So thank you. All right, the next item is item 7, the comments from the chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership Board, Richard Bonner. And you, as I said before, Richard, you deserve a long service medal for staying here throughout, and
There
the
we
same
go.
for Winston.
So, thank you very much, Mayor. And just a few words, actually. So just to this meeting, we're pleased, of course, to be able to contribute, and it is evident from the activities identified in the LEP budget, the scale of impact in recent years that the funding programs have made for the region, and we would like to celebrate those successes and the associated benefits. We recognise the ongoing value in the business members of the board having and being able to contribute to the activities associated with the LEP funding programs, and we would like to ensure that that continues going forwards. And we are pleased that the review that was agreed at the last joint committee is in hand, and we look forward to meaningful engagement in the process and have had back some of our early matters for consideration. And I just note that I've received a response through this afternoon, and we look forward to that ongoing discussion and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you again, Richard. Really appreciate that. Right, the next item is comments from the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we have received written comments from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and copies have been circulated and are available on the website alongside, that's the Combined Authority website, alongside the committee agenda papers. Can I ask Councillor Winston Duguid to, as chair, to present these comments, please? Councillor Duguid.
Thank you, Mentor Mayor. I won't repeat what I went through this morning, simply to say that we had a good long meeting on Monday going through things. Specifically on the local enterprise partnership budget setting, we haven't spent, we have looked at all the papers, but we haven't spent that much time on it. And I've agreed with Richard this morning that I and 3 colleagues will come and meet him probably late February or early March to understand the direction that he sees and the scope of the LEP budget going forward. And I look forward to that meeting with my colleagues. I'm a Baines councillor, so I shall be bringing with me a Bristol councillor, a South Gloucestershire councillor, and I've been reminded by text today, a North Somerset councillor as well, because North Somerset is very much part of this enterprise. I'll just leave it there today, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed, Winston. Appreciate that, as always. We now move to the report before us today. Firstly, item 9, Local Enterprise Partnership Budget Setting Report 2022-23. This report sets out the proposed 2022-23 budget for the Local Enterprise Partnership. I move the report recommendations. Can I please call for a seconder? Seconder for that, Marvin? Okay, I think you nodded first, Marvin. Thank you. Marvin, would you like to speak to this, please?
No, I'm just happy to support them.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, now before we move on to anything else, I have received just today, not long ago in fact, a letter addressed to me from Rob Galpin, and it asked me a few things, Rob, so I need to try and answer those. You'll appreciate I've only just seen your letter, so I'm having to work this out as I go along a bit. So firstly, one of the things you asked was that I remove the item from the agenda on Thornbury High Street. I'm afraid I don't have a vote, but if any of the other 4 leaders who are present wish to move this, and it's seconded and have them vote, then that is possible. But I can't do that for you, and you have asked me because your letter's addressed to me. So the leaders here will be listening to that. And similarly, you asked if I could postpone the vote, and I'm afraid it's the same situation. I don't have a vote on this committee, so on this item, and so therefore I don't have it within my power, but any of the leaders listening could propose something and second something to allow what you're requesting. So I think everybody's had the letter from Rob, yeah? So everyone knows what we're talking about. So they've had a chance to look at it. I don't know if people want to just have a quick chat for a minute and decide, because I'm just sort of throwing this on everybody, and it's a bit confusing and difficult. Marvin, you're looking quizzical, maybe. Maybe I'm misreading that. Basically, it's not in my hands, so it's in the leaders' hands, and it's entirely down to them what they want to do, whether they want to go along with your requests by proposing a motion to do so, and then seconding it, and then discussing it, and then voting on it. So is there anybody who wants to move, second, or anything else? Appears not. Okay, Toby.
Well, thank you, Chair. Sorry, so just for my benefit, could you just, what's been proposed and seconded so far? Nothing. Right, okay, fine, okay. Well, should I just reserve my remarks until we move on to the recommendation about Thornbury then? Okay.
Yes, if people can hear me. Okay, if I can therefore then take votes on each recommendation as set out below, and I'll declare the result of each vote. So recommendation A, to approve the LEP budget for 2022-23 as set out in Appendix 1. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's unanimous. So that is carried. And then recommendation B, to approve a 2022-23 contribution of £110,000 per each West of England unitary authority to be reviewed for the 23-24 years onwards as match funding to attract the government's LEP capacity funding. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous, so that's carried. And then we move to recommendation C, and that is to approve a £160,000 drawdown from the LEP General Reserve to fund the shortfall in 2022-23 LEP operating costs. Those in favour of doing that, please show. Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Recommendation D, this notes the forecast LEP revenue outturn for 2021-22 as set out in Appendix 2. This is for noting only. Is that noted, please? Thank you very much indeed. Recommendation E, to delegate the approval of the relocation of funds through the Getting Building Fund, GBF as known by, and Economic Development Fund for schemes within the programme on an overall cost-neutral basis to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the constituent councils. So first of all, I'll take one vote in relation to the Getting Building Fund, GBF. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. And then there's another vote now, please, in relation to the EDF delegation, and I don't have a vote on this. Those in favour, please show. Sorry, Toby, do you want to come in?
Chair, sorry, I'm just struggling to follow the recommendations as printed within our papers. I think we have just dealt with recommendation E, or are we now doing recommendation E? Well, the advice from the monitoring officer is it's a simple majority vote of those members present and voting.
Yes, Chair, but because the Mayor doesn't have a vote on that second element, what we've had to do is split it, and rather than send you the revised voting schedule, we thought we could deal with it here at the meeting through the script, if that's okay. So we're splitting the two. The Getting Building Fund is all of you, and the Economic Development Fund obviously doesn't include the Mayor. So next time we'll send the voting out around again. So that's the correct position today.
All right. Thank you for the clarification, Shazia.
Is that okay, Toby? Yeah, because I take obviously the advice of Shazia. If we could therefore do that again, then to take another vote in relation to the Economic Development Fund delegation, and I don't have a vote in that. So those in favour, please show. Could you just hold? It's fine. It's gone through. Okay, that's carried. Okay, and then recommendation F, to approve the outline business case for Thornbury High Street and allocate £4.577 million for the delivery of the scheme from the EDF pending ongoing discussions about investment fund headroom, and where there is urgency to delegate the approval of the full business case to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the West of England Chief Executive. And this is a simple majority vote of those members present and exclude me as Metro Mayor. So if anybody wants to speak on this before we make the vote. Toby?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to just firstly start by thanking the speakers who have taken the trouble to travel from Thornbury to join us today and to present the comments that you have to us. It is, I recognise, and I think it's it's very clear that this is a controversial issue within the community of Thornbury, a community that I was born, brought up in, educated in and around, and specifically the High Street, where my parents had a business in the High Street for many a year. So I approached this issue with with those personal views and experiences in mind. And I recognise, as I said, the controversial nature of the scheme and how there are strong views held on both sides, and we have seen and heard a number of the comments that are concerned and opposed to those changes, and I think within the written statements there are some comments in favour, and I think it's fair to say that. I receive a great many comments that are in favour of the scheme, but they don't wish to put themselves forward in a public forum, because I think ultimately what we are trying to do is to help Thornbury High Street to overcome the challenges that face all of our high streets. Thornbury is not immune to those big national changes, whether it's the shift to online shopping. And people needing more from their local high streets. Various comments were made by a mixture of Mr. Galpin, Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Best, and I'll try and deal with some of those, the themes. So if I start on the consultation side of things, we have consulted at various different stages over the course of this scheme, and as a result the scheme has changed from what was originally put in, but I do recognise that there are concerns, significant concerns from residents who have spoken to us today about those consultation processes, and I absolutely recognise that, as with any difficult project, as with any controversial project that any of us are doing, there are always going to be lessons to learn for the future around that, and I'm certainly committed to making sure that we do learn from this process, because we are now, and indeed I know that colleagues in other authorities in the West of England as well are having similar conversations with each of their respective market towns and high streets around how do we address those structural challenges that face all of our high streets. On some of the specific issues that have been talked about, so there's obviously been comments made around that freedom of information requests have been made and have not been responded to. The advice that I've received from officers, and this is where it starts to get quite technical, is that those information requests have been submitted under the Environmental Information Regulations. So that is a separate legal process to the Freedom of Information Act, and that explains the discrepancy within response times. We are responding to those information requests in line with the rules that govern those regulations. Points were made around some of the figures within the outline business case, and I think it's important to stress that this is an outline business case. There is still further work to do to refine those figures and to carry out more work as we continue to develop the scheme. But I think it's important for us today to be able to establish that budget to invest significantly in the future of Thornbury High Street. in the same way that we're investing significantly in other high streets and towns across South Gloucestershire. The most recent one that we've spoken about as a committee has been the work that's going on in Kingswood. One of the points made as part of those comments on the outline business case was just around the impact on cycling when you just look at the cycling facilities within the high street itself. And I think that's absolutely a fair point to make. It's important then for me to say that we have to consider projects like this in the round. And so there is a separate work stream, the A38 transport corridor, that is considering further cycling investment in public transport as well. That connects up to make sure that overall we have an integrated package. I want to thank the work, and I think Dave Redgwell was the one who referenced it. You know, the work of the Thornbury High Street Accessibility and Equality Group. We have taken on board a lot of the comments that they have said in order to how we can improve the scheme to ensure that it is inclusive and recognising the needs of all members of the Thornbury community. Finally, I would just make the point that whilst this is called the Thornbury High Street project, there is investment set out within the outline business case that will benefit Rock Street car park, St Mary's car park. Car parks that contribute to over 600 free car parking spaces within the town centre, ensuring that we are providing options for everyone, regardless of how they wish to travel in and out of the town. So I think, Chair, those are the comments that I'd wish to make on this. I will be proposing the recommendation today, so we continue the work to ensure that Thornbury High Street is able to embrace the significant challenges facing it and all of our high streets in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toby. Is there any other of the leaders who wish to speak on this at the moment? No? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, can I move to recommendation G, which is asking to approve the change requests for schemes within the local growth and getting building fund programmes as set out in Appendix 3. Oh, sorry, we've got to F. We looked at F. Long day, long day. Okay, let's go on. Yeah, of course, Toby.
It's just to really emphasise again that the term has come up here, which is about the case Combined Authority Chief Exec in consultation with the West of England Chief Execs. Again, just to really emphasise that term about West of England Chief Execs and Combined Authority Chief Execs working together, particularly on these kinds of issues, is incredibly important, and we need to make sure that that has real substance to it.
Thank you, Marvin. I was listening to that even though I was shuffling papers. Okay, thank you. So in that case, let's go to the right recommendation, Toby. Recommendation F, and that is to approve the outline business case for Thornbury High Street and allocate £4.577 million for the delivery of the scheme from the EDF, pending ongoing discussions about investment fund headroom, and where there is urgency, to delegate the approval of the full business case to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the West of England Chief Executives. So this requires a simple majority vote of those members present and voting, although I don't have a vote on this matter. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. And then the next recommendation, let's go back to the one that I previously read out. Apologies for that. So recommendation G, to approve the change requests for schemes within the local growth and getting building fund programmes as set out in Appendix 3. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. We now move to recommendation H, to approve the change requests for schemes within the economic development and revolving infrastructure fund programmes as set out in Appendix 4. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. And I think, last but not least, we now move to, before we close this meeting today, it is Shazia Daya's last day with us today. And it's also Ian Hurd's last meeting with us today. I wanted to say a couple of things. Well, firstly, Shazia, what an election you had to deal with mine. Having to deal with that huge number of votes and complicated systems across an area of over 1 million people during a pandemic, no less, was an amazing feat. So thank you very much for that. And then in terms of Ian, well, Ian, I've known you for a long time, actually, although we had a big gap in the middle. But it's been lovely to reacquaint myself with you. And I have to say that I will always remember your 30-second notices and the expressions on people's faces as you do so, because there's no good way of doing that, but you do it better than anyone else I know. So thank you very much indeed. And I know I speak with the agreement of all committee members in wishing both Shazia and Ian both well for the future. Thank you very much indeed. That is the end of the meeting. Thank you to everybody who's come quite significant distance in some cases I know today. I really appreciate your time and efforts. Thank you to all officers who have contributed to today's proceedings. I know there's an awful lot of work that goes into making these things happen. And thank you to everybody who's been part of the committee today. Thank you ever so much.